Well, welcome back, everyone. It is 3 o'clock on the East Coast and noon on the West Coast, and we have people on both. So I just wanted to welcome on the East Side, Justin Jones, who is the CEO and founder of IMEG in Tennessee. And then we have Jack Newkirk, who is with Navis, he spoke last year. So I think a lot of people probably remember him speaking about kind of the early stages of where we were looking at demand data then when we were just having these conversations. So you've been hearing a lot about demand over the last few sessions. And now we want to talk about what tools that you have at your disposal without having to buy something new to see how to gauge demand. So welcome, Jack, welcome, Justin, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Jack.
Thank you so much, Amy, and for having me. As those of you who are watching can see, I am proudly working in my garage because of COVID. My wife also works for Navis, and I've sacrificed the office for her, so that means that I'm out here in what she's referring to as my mantuary or man cave. So thank you for joining me today. Again, Amy, I'm really appreciative for the fact that you could get us in here and let us kind of share some of our insights and hopefully put some learning on some folks today. So I kind of want to blast through this really quickly, get through some introductions and get right to the meat and potatoes of it. So this is kind of what we're going to talk about today, the overall idea of what a guest booking journey is. We're going to talk about the key components to what really encompasses total demand for a vacation rental management company or a hotel. And then I'm going to turn it over to Justin, and he's going to take us through a walkthrough of the digital side of how you track guest interaction with your website and so on and so forth. I won't take his thunder now. And then he'll hand it back over to me, and I'll walk you through a case study that we've done on a very large mountain market client in the vacation rental industry, and maybe share some insights that we've learned from that. And then if we can get through this on time, we'll have some time for Q&A at the end, hopefully. So with all of that, my name's Jack Newkirk. I am the enterprise sales consultant for Navis. I'm based out of the Oregon office. I've been in hospitality in a couple of different countries in various capacities, and resort and hotel and VR management for about 14 years now. And I'm just looking forward to maybe bringing some of that knowledge to bear today with this webinar. I've been with Navis for 3 years, and I want to be really clear, my job today is not to sell you Navis. It's simply to help float the industry a little bit higher and help with some learning. So Justin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. Justin Jones, CEO, founder of IMEG. We're a digital marketing agency and kind of business. We'd love the travel and tourism space, and just looking to add some value here today. Most of everything we're talking about, as he alluded to, is you don't have to go buy anything, not trying to sell anything at all, just really the better the industry does, the better everyone does. So just to add value into the industry. So thanks for the handoff there, Jack.
Of course, Justin, thanks much. All right, we'll have our contact information up on a slide at the end too if you'd like to get a hold with us. So as a brief kind of introduction to what we're going to talk about today, we all understand that as sales and marketing, revenue management, and general managers come together to understand how to increase revenue, how to drive more bookings and remarket to past guests, there is a journey that every guest goes along. We call it, here at Navis, we call it the guest booking journey. We are not going to address this entire thing today. Rather, we're just going to talk about the awareness through the bookings side of it, preparing for arrival and stay, and post-stay and share. That's another conversation for another day. But what we really want to dig into is how a guest flows through this researching or awareness to researching to booking flow chart, if you want to call it that. And Justin's going to take care of the digital side of it, imagining that a guest does a generic search for vacation rentals in Telluride, and then at that point goes down that path of either becoming a guest of yours or not. So with all that in mind, we call this idea of total demand. It's a new concept to vacation rental managers, but it's not that new to hoteliers. And a lot of folks, especially if you're just following like pace and booking data, they're not getting the true picture of what their total demand is. So I've distilled it down for the purposes of this presentation to 3 main pillars that constitute total demand. The first of them is the easiest to understand. Those are your on the books guests who already have a future reservation with you. You can get that data out of your PMS, and it's what pace reporting is usually based off of. The second pillar is a little bit more complicated. It's everybody that's currently shopping you, people who are inquiring either by visiting your website or sending you an email or chatting on your website or picking up the phone and calling. Those are all of your potential guests. And then the third pillar is what I call regrets and denials, or what the industry calls that. And those are people who have actually taken the steps of inquiring with you and have decided to stay elsewhere. So without visibility into all three of those categories, it's really hard to calculate your total demand. I'm a visual person, so here's a different visual for what that looks like. Again, the guests that have decided to book with you in the green circle, they have future stays on the books. The orange circle, guests that have already inquired and ultimately decided to stay elsewhere for whatever reason. And then lastly, those guests that are still in the shopping phase that are potentially maybe your lowest hanging fruit. And let's be clear, up here in the X section, the orange circle, there are certainly guests there that you can go back after and get, and I'll talk about that later. But there are also guests up here that are not your guest. Those are folks who maybe they'll never be able to afford to stay in the accommodations that you have, or maybe they have requirements like they're traveling with pets and you simply don't have any pet available units, whatever it may be. But those three groups of guests, again, backing up here, on the books guests, those who are currently shopping, and those who have said no. That's your total demand. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Justin so that he can explain the blue circle, which is those guests that are still shopping for you. And Justin, I'm going to go ahead and change the presenter to you if you don't mind.
Excellent, thank you.
All right, there you go.
So let's dig in here. Let me get this. Can everyone see that? Okay, excellent. So I'm a very doer, visual person as well. So we're actually going to do this together. One of the things that I love that Amy puts everybody up to the challenge with these is we've got, a short amount of time to bring in some kind of complex things. So I'm going to kind of take this at about a 30,000 foot view. If you have any questions, feel free to email me or reach out to me by phone. I'd love to answer any of those questions. So one of the things, give me 1 second here to pull my notes over. All right. So one thing we have to think about is I'm a very physics-driven data science kind of guy, and we got to look at a first principle approach, which is I like to put everything in 2 buckets. There are more than 2 buckets, but just for this quick introduction to this, we have content and distribution. Content being the vacation rentals that you have. What are the amenities that you have? What are the reviews? What are the rates? What are anything like that you have? That'd be considered content. Distribution would be OTAs, an email channel, a pay-per-click, SEO, email. Those are distributions. So now we got content distribution to lay kind of some framework. So a lot of times when managing rates, people are just looking at my rates are high, my rates are low based on a comp set without digging into the actual data of that. So what I would want to dig into today is what does this data look like? And where can I get it? There's some great tools out there that we love, Key Data, AirDNA, great tools, but that kind of tells us what the market is doing and not necessarily what is happening before that. So kind of the first thing we want to talk about is, let me slide this screen up just a little. I like to use Google Trends. It'll tell me kind of historical. So I can look here and say past 12 months, past 5 years. I can download this, put it in a spreadsheet, do some pivot tables, move all kinds of stuff around, which is great. Today, we're going to look at destined vacation rentals. I can also compare it to another market. So how are we doing and what are the trends? If I only go out to 12 months, it'll also give me a prediction of what they're expecting as well. And I can look at what markets are growing for me and also related queries about that. Google Trends, probably heard of it, but a great tool for you to be able to see what people are actually looking for. So once again, excellent tool for what are people actually looking for. Because if they're not looking, it doesn't matter if you rank in search or if you're on an OTA or whatever, because they're not looking, so they're not even going to go there. So where are some opportunities in actual demand in an overall market for like destined vacation rentals? And like I said, you can also go here, download this and put it in Google Sheets or an Excel spreadsheet and kind of play with that data. The next thing I like to do is get a little deeper down into that. And that would be, I can put in destined vacation rentals in a tool called keywordtool.io. They have a free version. They have a not very expensive paid version as well. It's like 20, 30 bucks a month. And I can put in destined vacation rentals and I can see trends over time. And I can also see related. So what I like to do is be able to see like 1 bedroom vacation rentals in Destin. So let's see what's around that, and is that up or down year over year? Because it's another way to maybe do owner acquisition. Like, hey, there is way more demand in the marketplace for 3 bedrooms over 1 bedroom, so maybe I need to be gearing up because I don't have a lot of 3-bedroom cabins. And here we can see, or vacation rentals, where we can see what's trending up and what's not. So this is kind of before they get to your website. What is the market doing? And we know that 4 bedrooms is up or down. Is the competition high or low? Those kind of things. I mean, this is kind of an SEO strategy, but we always say, where are people and what are they looking for? And then your product should be what you deliver them through that. So this is another great tool. Let's switch over to how do I compare to my competitors? So let's say that my SEO channel is up 20%, but is the market up 30%? And if the market's up 30% of people searching, then am I really up 20%? And of course, you could find that in Google Analytics. So Google Organic is up 48% for this particular business, and revenue is up 88%. But is search up or down? Search may be down 10%, but you're doing a better job of leveraging that asset. The next thing would be to how am I comparing against my competitors? So now that I have some competitor data in here, where am I growing and where are they not about being found once I know where people are looking, am I trending up or down in the market? Because these are the things you can't control. Even if you rank more, you set your rates perfect, like all these things, you got the perfect comp set. If less people are looking, less people are booking. So how do we find out if they're not looking for this particular thing? What are they looking for and where are they looking? Was I only running ads in Texas for some crazy reason, just for an example? And now there's an influx from Florida. And we know that drive to leisure markets have had a big influx from markets they typically haven't served because international travelers aren't traveling internationally, and they're figuring out a way to do drive to destinations or at least staying nationally. So now that we've taken them from what are they looking for, because if they're not looking for it, it doesn't matter how good our rates are, how good our product is, how good our reviews are. What's the demand they're looking for? What are they looking for? How do I compare to my competitors in traffic? This is a tool, by the way, called SEMrush. This one is not free, but it's one that you can get if you want to see a ton of things about your competitors as well as your own business. This isn't a presentation on that, but a tool that we use all the time to see like who's up and down in traffic and why. And then next thing, so now we've got the demand looking. Now we can get on the website and look at one thing that we like to do is see what marketing channels are performing. But furthermore, let's say my 1-bedroom properties are not booking. I like to look at, remember, the content versus distribution. I like to look at distribution before my content. While it's equally important to look at your distribution and content, I like to start with distribution. So if I put in a 1-bedroom, like 1-bedroom cabins are up 10%, but did I add 20% more inventory year over year? If so, that's not enough traffic. So I might be lowering my rate when it's an actual distribution problem. So my content rates, I'm lowering the rate instead of increasing the distribution, which means I need to throw a marketing lever, not a rate lever. Maybe my rate's okay. Maybe the property's not booking, not because the rate's too high, maybe because there's not enough distribution. This is a way to see in your Google Analytics what your distribution is doing. So then I would say the 1-bedroom, in this instance, it's a cabin company. Then I want to say source. I can switch over here to source, medium, and say, why is 1-bedroom cabins up or down? Well, Google Organic's up 5%, so everything's looking really good. Here, the question may be, and of course this includes COVID, if this number was down 30%, then I don't have a rate problem, I have a distribution problem. Is it cheaper to throw a rate with a discount, so maybe I convert higher, or is it better to throw a distribution lever of getting in front of more people? And then by using these tools, is there more people to get in front of? That'll help me there. So also in here, you can set up real-time alerts where basically you can say, if my traffic has dropped for 1-bedrooms below 10% or above 10%, send me an immediate notification. Send me an absolute immediate notification, so I know that if I have an influx of distribution, I can probably raise my rates. If I have a lowering of distribution, I may need to lower my rate. Hopefully you just increase the distribution. So it's a great way to do that. You can also set up events and paths and funnels and all that stuff. Behavior flows, where are they dropping off? You could look at exit percentages. Not going to dig into that, but so let's just walk through this and kind of recap where we are. We figured out what people are looking for in the market, the demand to begin with, and demand and supply are what generate pricing. So now that we've got the market, we've got our competitive analysis. Rich, you could also look at the past and a little bit of the future through key data and AirDNA, another great tool that I think is a combination to this. But now where kind of Jack left off is now they've looked, we've got them all the way to the booking page, and maybe distribution was right. Maybe the rate was right, maybe not, but they're leaving your website now at the checkout process. And I think that Navis has some really good tools. I'm going to pass this back to Jack and let him take off where cart abandonment, if you're not familiar with cart abandonment, it's where they're going to land on the final booking page, not complete the checkout. And then how do we stay in front of those people to add value and stay top of mind? And Jack's going to take off from there because I think Navis has some really good tools from here forward. And then he's going to take it into also the call center data, which is another gold mine for figuring out rates and demand and all that kind of stuff. So thank you.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. And so to be perfectly clear with everybody, both Navis as well as IMEG have shopping cart abandonment tools. They work differently for different folks, but I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about ours. Thank you so much, Justin. So depending on the, there you go. So depending on the level of engagement that your guest has shown with your website, there are a variety of ways to scrape their data. You can use services that'll check to see if they're cookied and compare that to maybe email addresses that they may have on file with other cookies. But in cases like what Navis offers, we have a shopping cart abandonment tool that lays right over the top of your booking engine. And so what it enables you to do in real time is capture the data that the guest is inputting into their query in the booking engine. So if they're looking for 3-bedroom cabins for the dates of August 18th through the 23rd, then you'll have that information. If they go so far as to type things like their name or their email address or their phone number as they're filling out the guest information within the booking engine, we'll scrape that for you too, and then basically create something that's actionable for you to go back after and remarket. So here is where I think at this point in the guest journey is where the strategy shifts from being a reactive one to being a proactive one. We've done all this work, we've spent PPC dollars, you've partnered with Justin and his folks to drive people to your website and drive people to your phones. Now is your opportunity to actually take action on the data that you're capturing from them and either get them to book or go after them for what's called a second chance booking. So with that said, Justin, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great, awesome. I'm just gonna go ahead and move through this. What I decided to do for this presentation is to do an analysis of a major mountain market that is suffering a little bit looking down the barrel of the upcoming ski season. So a little bit of background, we know from being in business for over 30 years at Navis that about 64% of people who inquire with a contact center, whether that's hotel or vacation rental, about 64% of them do not book on the first call. So again, that guest, they Googled vacations in Telluride, Colorado, and they went all the way down the funnel of landing on somebody's webpage, and then they went through the process of picking up the phone and calling once they identified the unit that they wanted to rent, and then they wound up hanging up the phone without making a reservation. We believe that 64% is your lowest hanging fruit, and the data that you can capture on those guests is the most important bit of the whole puzzle. So with that said, the specific mountain market that I looked at was in Colorado, and this accounts for over 1,200 units worth of inventory. So I wanted to get a big data set and actually look and see why people weren't booking for the upcoming season. For those of you who are in mountain markets, you're aware, of course, that the lead volume is just not there this year over last year due to concerns about cancellation, and it's a little bit more difficult to get to. They're destination markets as opposed to drive-to markets in many cases, and so lead volume is down year over year, and so is occupancy, and so is revenue. And so specifically, the one client that I looked at, their year over year occupancy was off pace by about 66% for the upcoming ski season. I'll get to those dates in a moment. In addition to that, their revenue was off pace about 50%, and their lead volume was down over 35%. So people aren't inquiring as much, and they're not booking as robustly as they were last year. So what I wanted to do was make sure that the data was for comparable periods, and so we pulled specifically for reservation inquiries for the dates of December 1 through February 1 for both last year as well as the upcoming year, and then only inquiries since January 1 through yesterday of each year. So we can say in the first 9 months of 2019 for ski season, this is the business that they saw. In the first 9 months of 2020 for ski season, this is the business they saw. And the results were pretty eye-opening. So I'm just going to get into it really quickly for you, and we'll get to the data in just a moment here. But this particular client, for them, what they knew, even though revenue was off and occupancy was off, they knew that they did not want to fade on rate, because once you fade on rate, it takes years to recover. If you're following the folks from STR, Smith Travel Research, they recently had their hotel data conference last month in August, and they were sharing some pretty eye-opening stats for specific to the hotel industry, that occupancy is really not projected to be back where it was prior to the pandemic until 2023, and that RevPAR is not going to be back where it was until at least 2025. So they're looking at 5 years worth of repair work to do on getting rates back up and occupancy back up to where they need to be. So for this particular client, they did not want to rip the carpet out from underneath their own feet, so to speak, by slashing their rates. Additionally, what they found when they dug in is that rate resistance was their most common non-booking reason. So those two things are in immediate juxtaposition to each other. We don't want to fade on rate, but we know that everybody thinks, or the majority of callers think, that our rates are too high. So what else can we do? Well, what they also found is that they'd had about a 280% increase in turn downs year over year, specifically due to their deposit and cancellation policies. Those of you who have call centers, I'm sure that your agents right now and for the last 6-7 months have been overwhelmed with, hey, what's the cancellation policy? I want to make this reservation. I have the money for it, but if travel restrictions don't get lifted in time for us to vacation, I want to be able to get my money back. So they saw a huge increase in those, and they saw a 210% increase in minimum length of stay turndowns. Folks are a little bit less willing to commit to long periods of time that they're going to be on vacation, whether that's a 4-day minimum length of stay or a week long or whatever it would be. So knowing that they didn't want to fade on rate and that rate resistance was a big issue, what they maybe thought was that we can play with these other two levers here, which is our policies, our internal policies, to see if we can drive more of those guests to convert. So with that said, here's the actual data. So this is from 2019, and I know there's a lot on this screen and it's not all super important, but I just wanted to have it all up there just so that you could kind of see the complexity of how you analyze this stuff. The blue line, and this is for 2019, it's last year. So the blue line right here represents the total number of nights inquired for 12/1 of 19 through 2/1 of 20, so the last ski season. So total number of nights inquired, little bump right there around Christmas. Or sorry, decrease right before Christmas and then increase in the week leading up to New Year's. And that right there is, of course, Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The yellow line right here, that's your not booked leads. This is all people who inquired and ultimately said no. All of these lines down here are a function of that. And then this orange line in the middle, that's the actual number of leads booked. So this green line is the one I want to talk about. This is the rate resistance line. So you can see that during their peak season, when rates are at their highest, you would naturally expect rate resistance to go up. This is a healthy curve. I appreciate this strategy that they have, especially bringing it on down toward the middle of January and then back up for that holiday weekend. Now, what we've noticed is that in 2020, this looks a little bit different. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on over. So anytime there is an external factor thrown in this case a pandemic and a recession at the same time, you start to see exaggerations in peaks and valleys. I'm going to actually go back one slide just so that we can view that again. That's a healthy year, and this is a not so healthy year. Now, the other thing you're going to notice is this legend over here. This gets a lot shorter. It used to be all the way up to 800, and so the scale is much diminished, not just the pattern, but the scale. So what we found here is that, yeah, there's a bit of a correlation between last year and this year with exaggerations, but we also have this major issue right here in the booking curve, where we take a huge drop right during and after Christmas that we did not have last year. And then, of course, there's the rest of the year to consider. This in and of itself isn't super surprising. We were expecting to see this. But what I want to get into is the actual rate resistance and the conversion correlation. So what they started to notice, based upon data that their own agents were gathering while on calls with guests, is that the reason why people were saying no due to rate kind of mirrored last year, right on up through the new year. And from here, it got almost the inverse of last year. Conversion overall, the blue line was last year and the gray line is this year. Conversion overall is pretty consistent, and on average they actually increased conversion about 2.5 points over this time period. But they were able to see, okay, based upon what people are saying due to minimum length of stay and deposit and cancellation policy, we can actually still get people to book and convert more calls if we make some adjustments to those policies. This tells me right here that their rates are probably slashed after the first of the year just to increase occupancy and what we call compress their inventory, so that as the booking window gets closer and closer to the 1st of January, they can increase rates at that point. And of course, that looks like they're still holding strong right here at Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So with all this data taken into consideration, there had to be some action that was taken by this client, and here was the action that they decided to do. They relaxed their deposit and cancellation policy to remove that lever from the rate resistance overall bucket. And then they offered incentives for advanced bookings, such as book prior to Thanksgiving and get one free night, or whatever it would be. They still charged the same rates for their nights, so they didn't have to publish lower rates, but instead they were able to get extra stays and incentivize those guests to book earlier, because the earlier you can get guests to book, the more quickly you compress your inventory and allow you to yield your rates up as you get closer to check-in date. The other thing that they did was they targeted need periods, identifying where they really needed to drive occupancy, and then have a strategy in place to go after high value guests who had actually inquired specifically for those need periods. And that enabled them to, of course, compress their inventory a little bit earlier. So at the end of the day, the results of their actions are pretty straightforward. The first one is their average length of stay year over year has actually increased by 0.32 nights. So close up almost to 7.5 nights now is their average length of stay in this particular market. And the reason for that is, of course, they were offering those incentives for guests to book earlier, and they were making it easier for guests to get their deposits back or their full amount back if they had to cancel due to COVID or other travel restrictions. So their average length of stay increased. Their average stay value also went up by about $67 or 9.5%. This is because it was more comfortable for them to spend that money knowing that it was more likely that they could get it back. And then more importantly than that, second chance web bookings increased by 6.2%. So let me put this in English for you. A second chance web booking would be an example where if I call Justin Jones's hotel and I speak with Mr. Jones and he offers me a rate for the room, and I say, great, Justin, I just need to visit with my wife. Thank you so much. I hang up the phone. I'm not booked. Then I go and visit with my wife, and she says, yeah, go ahead and book it. So then I just get on his website and book directly there. They saw a 6.2% increase in those second chance web bookings, which is a reflection of the fact that everybody's got higher call volumes right now, because all of our guests are wondering, can I get my money back? You know, do we have to wear masks in the restaurant? Whatever it would be. That is a remarkable increase. Moreover, they also were able to go out and capture $2.9 million in what we call outbound bookings. So by analyzing all of those guests that were, again, remember, high priority, high value guests that were in targeted need periods, they were able to deploy an outbound calling campaign, calling those guests that were still in the buying funnel back and offering them a second chance to make that reservation, either by offering amenities or simply being a good concierge. So that was the result, or these 4 items here were the results of them analyzing this data, making good decisions based upon what the data was saying, and then actually acting upon it. So my key takeaways for this section, and I'm only half an hour in, which is perfect, leaving some time for Q&A. If possible, really do hold on rate. If you're in a market that is going gangbusters right now, then this isn't necessarily advice for you. But if you are in a market that is struggling or that is behind pace, I really do counsel you to, if possible, hold on rate and instead adjust other levers like minimum length of stay and policy and things like that, which is what this next point is all about. Look beyond rate resistance to truly understand why people are saying no. Is it rate or is it something else? Also, differentiate by unit type. One thing that this particular client that I just showed you did is they added what we call a different non-booking reason for this year. And in the past, all they had as a non-booking reason was no availability was one of the reasons that an agent could choose. Now they've expanded that to be no ADA units available, no pet-friendly units available, no ski-in, ski-out units available, so that the revenue management team can see, okay, here's where we really need to put our emphasis, is not necessarily on more ADA units, but it's more on ski-in, ski-out, which then of course impacts or informs their owner acquisition strategy. So if possible, differentiate by unit type to get a true understanding of why people are saying no. Get granular, but not so granular that that you lose sight of the end goal. You want to be able to act upon the data that your agents are inputting into your lead management system. So do empower your agents by actually giving them a lead management system, some way that they can actually find a path to capture this data on your callers so that you can in turn act upon that as a revenue manager. And then lastly, this is my favorite, don't overthink it. They say it's not rocket surgery, right? But there is some science to it. If you have better tools in place, then you can certainly capture more scientific information. But at the end, revenue management is just as much art as it is science, and don't overthink it. Hopefully that's a nice little primer on a call center demand tracking for everybody. At this point, I would like to open it up to some Q&A, and I'll leave this up for now and see exactly if there's anybody in the audience that has any questions. And I'd encourage you to just simply chat those at us in the chat box.
While they're typing in, Justin, I'm curious for you, as far as consumer behavior goes for your clients, what are you seeing first? I mean, are we really looking at a change in how travelers are behaving? And how do you know? Like, what kind of, would you really think about the why behind what the consumer is doing?
Yeah, on our website, there's quite a few blog articles on this, some of the predictions we made back in April of where we thought. And a lot of those came to be true. So if you want more insights, you could go there. But the short answer is drive to destinations and vacation rentals are winning. In fact, I can't think of a client out of 60 plus that are in a drive to vacation rental that have not exceeded last year's numbers. If you're in a fly to non-leisure, you have some problems still, generally speaking. Hotels in drive to leisure markets haven't fully recovered, but they're on their way there. But vacation rentals and campgrounds in a drive to market have more than recovered. And the reason why is just simply like, in the Smoky Mountain and Destin market, for example, there's a lot more people coming from areas we don't normally see. We don't usually see a lot of New York and Miami and those crowds, and we're seeing a ton of those because people are like, well, we usually go somewhere else, but we're not going there. We don't want to fly overseas. Really don't want to fly even nationally as much. So what's a drive to leisure destination? So I think the why is that so many things are closed. It's hard to travel overseas, so they're staying and just driving to their destination.
I do have a question here. What's the easiest way to get demand traffic data for specific days from booking engine queries and call centers?
Do you want me to handle that one, Justin?
Yeah, I would throw one thing in. Your website should be tracking what people are searching for and should be storing that so you can compare. Not only are they on your website, but what dates are they searching for? Your website should be doing that. That's on the website side. On the call center side or anything else you've got, Jack, would be huge.
Sure thing. The bridge between the website and the call center will be, of course, shopping cart abandonment, which will give you an insight as well. Quick product plug, Navis is offering shopping cart abandonment for free for 90 days to anyone with a qualifying booking engine. So if you're interested in deploying shopping cart abandonment on your website as a trial period, no obligation, we're happy to put the code on there for you. From a call center perspective, the way demand is tracked, or the easiest way to track demand is by tracking all of your turndowns and regrets, or regrets and denials, if you want to call them that, the reasons why people say no. If you have a tool like Navis, then it'll automatically do that for you. If you're working manually to figure out your call volumes, then there are certainly ways that you can set up, I would say like a Google Doc or an Excel spreadsheet that has very clear non-free form entry regrets and denial non-booking reasons. You want the agents to be able to pick from a drop down and not type it in themselves, because if you have 1,000 callers, you'll have 1,000 different non-booking reasons, and you can't act upon that data. But I hope that answers the question of how you track demand through your call center.
So, like, if you go to the website and this, if I go to search for a 4-bedroom house in Gatlinburg, since you're here, and the website comes back and shows me that nothing's available, is there something that a property manager can do to maybe show me maybe 5 bedrooms, with some type of a different, option, or maybe even a 3-bedroom would work, or, some type of alternative is part of that question. Part of it too is, does the property manager know that things are showing up, that there are no results available? I think you're muted, Justin.
Yeah, sorry about that, I was muted. So if they have the right, and you could build this pretty easily into your front end booking engine. Ours natively does that, where you can control what people see as opposed to saying we just don't have anything available. You may also there's all kinds of things you could throw in there. Change the language up so they're not sure if it's available. They call you because a human's better on the phone to say, oh, let me recommend this to you than a website. So there's all kinds of ways. So if your website doesn't do it, of course we have a solution for that. But if it doesn't, it's not something, we'd love for you to switch to our front-end booking engine, but you don't have to. You could have your web development team build some things like that out, and they should be doing that. That is a huge converter. There's a massive amount of conversion from that can take place by making sure you're not having null results of we don't have anything available. And that you have the data to know what are people searching for where I'm saying no. Because that's also an opportunity to turn down marketing for those dates and save some money. So you're not saying no. So you're not driving people to the website and saying no, which is expensive. So storing that data, but your front end booking engine should be doing that for you.
Heather Richard, I see that you've got a question here. I was going to see if you wanted to ask it. I was going to try to unmute you.
Oh, sure. So just trying to represent a property manager who may feel like they don't have good direct traffic data. So if I'm in a market where most consumers are choosing to book via a third party, maybe only 10% of my traffic is coming direct, something like that. Then could you say, well, it's not really as statistically significant, right? If you maybe shouldn't rely on it as heavily if it's not representative of enough of your demand data. Just wanted to talk a little about if you think there's a threshold there as to where you really need to seek out, data from the third party, or kind of to look at things a little differently because of that dynamic.
Can you name the city or the location?
I think that could vary by property manager or market.
Gotcha.
I think it's really varied. Yeah, I think there could be multiple markets there.
Of course, great question, but broad, so I'll answer it broadly. I don't like to answer broad, but I'll have to on this one. Is that if it's a drive to leisure, I don't know that that could be true. Because people, no matter if you're booking through an OTA, or you're booking direct, the same demand data, which we showed in Google Trends and Keyword Tool, which is pulling from Google's data, is going to be the same. So you just have to compete more. So it would be in a non-leisure or a fly-to market, you may have, like, for example, Nashville, Tennessee, as opposed to the, Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge area. That's kind of an OTA driven market. So that would be correct. But if you're going to drive to leisure, I would always question that there's probably enough data for you. If you're in a more urban market, you may have to rely more on OTAs, but still the demand would be the same. You can still get the demand data because Airbnb and VRBO is getting their traffic from search, getting their traffic from social, the same channels you have access to. The question would be, since it's so small and the business may be small, is it cheaper to let them market for you than you market for yourself?
It's kind of interesting because it goes back to the broader question, right, about the funnel. So where is the top of the funnel or bottom of it? I get that confused. If you're
Heather,
looking at a funnel, the top of the funnel, yeah. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was say, Heather, I would say if you have, if this is a friend or a prospect or a client of yours or even a competitor, I'd say their issue here is not necessarily tracking demand. It's about getting more direct bookings. Like if your issue, demand is not the problem here. It's distribution is the problem. And so if the percentage of direct contribution is that low that they don't trust the data, then as a hospitality professional, I would counsel you to work on getting more direct bookings.
Yeah, so maybe you don't also, maybe you can't use your own analytics because there's so little, but you could use the keyword tool, the SEMrush, the Google Trends to kind of get some idea of, is my market demand going up or down and how many people are looking and what's the competitiveness level of that.
I agree with everything you're saying. It was a little bit more of just a, kind of to drive some conversation, but certainly some markets more than others will be able to drive direct, right, and change that consumer behavior. And I do agree that even looking at the little bit of data you have internally is directionally helpful, and that you're still going to get some really valuable nuggets from it.
Mm-hmm.
It's super interesting conversation because, it's the idea that the premise is that the OTAs have demand that Google doesn't track in their trends. And I'm not sure that I think that's true. Based on the earnings calls at Expedia and Booking and Trip, they certainly realize that in VR that the top of the funnel is Google. That's where a lot of their traffic is still coming from. Airbnb, debatable. But I do think it's interesting. Because Google coming into vacation rentals and more people starting to display their properties there, it changes things at that OTA level for sure. I would love to have a marketing conference in a similar way that we're doing this. I think it would be super fun. As far as, go ahead, Heather, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, you bring up a good point, because I think, Justin, you didn't actually, because I don't think there's data, you didn't actually show data on Google Hotel ads for VR. And last I checked, that wasn't really robust reporting that was available. But, something to keep an eye on with that product, to your point, Amy.
Yeah, and that works really well for hotels. So I think it's going, we have hotel clients too, and that works really, really well for hotels. I think that it'll also, once they, get, more serious about it and pushing it more and making it a priority in the vast amount of businesses they have, that will be something that is successful for vacation rentals. I do not think that it's going to take over Airbnb and VRBO the same way that everybody thought that, Google's going to take over Facebook and Facebook's going to take over Google and all those kinds of things. Like, they'll all still exist, but, the travel and tourism market is so big that, even if Google took 2%, it would be a big, big number.
Do you know what the take rate is going to be there yet? Have you heard?
No.
I have not heard anything. I know we've got a panel discussing it coming up. Real quickly on pricing display, coming from the software, if I change my rates in the software and I want to create some type of strike through pricing on the website, I know we're going to talk about this on Thursday too, but I was just really curious what your views on it while we still have you. Do we have what we need through the software APIs to really do strike through pricing?
It depends on the API. Still, I think that some of the bigger software companies owned by bigger distribution channels have very weak APIs.
Very diplomatic of you.
But there are some really good ones out there. There are some really good ones out there. I'm not saying they're all that way. I'm just saying that there's a big market share with a big distribution channel that has weaker APIs than I think should be, and the strike through would be a challenge. But I think it's powerful.
Well, I really appreciate this, you guys. We're going to take a break, come back and talk about the property side of the data and some review stuff. So I think that'll be interesting as well. Justin, Jack, I'm grateful to you both. Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Honored by the opportunity. Thanks much.
That's awesome.